Hello. Hello, everybody. Good morning. How are you? Maybe it's not morning where you are. It's morning here. And even though it's overcast and a little gloomy out there, that's actually my preferred weather, I guess. I don't know. There's something about sun that just, I don't know. I find it suspicious. I don't know. That's just a joke. But I would rather it be overcast and gloomy. And in Kansas, mostly it's sunny, which is nice. But yeah, so it's been overcast for a few days now, and I just find it to be really cozy. So that's the weather I got going on. Now you know that. And wouldn't you know it, it's like doesn't look dark in here, kind of is dark in here. And my little notes is kind of hidden from me, but that's okay. We're going to figure it out. And yeah, so I don't really have any housekeeping things. We're going to get right into it, but I am going to point you back to the channel. On the playlists tab, there are lots of playlists. I've gone kind of crazy lately. And one of my favorite hobbies is recommending content to people. And this is actually something that I've had to like really work on inside of myself, is because when I know people that I like, that I care about, in my olden days, I would send them content like about themselves all the time. Like like just too much. Like that's just too much for any one person to try to integrate into their own life, like into their own unfolding of like, what do they want to be doing, Carly? Like, it's not really on me to give them, like, here's your curriculum for like how to show up in your life. Yeah, my cheeks get hot as I talk about this because this is little girl Carly kind of even into the grown-up body stage, but I feel like I've really worked on it. And so anyways, how do you channel something like that? Like my favorite hobby is to recommend content to people, but maybe it's too much or they don't want to hear it. So this is what I've come up with, and I don't know if it's going to work, but this is at least new territory that I haven't tried yet. So on the playlist tab on my channel, you will find lots of things. One of them is each week as I watch videos in preparation for these live streams, there's like a weekly playlist of like, here's the fun stuff that I found that's out there, that's astrology related, that's timely for right now. And so that playlist is being made each week. The other playlist is like this week, for example, the March 25th one, I started that playlist Sunday or Monday, I think, and have been putting stuff on it all week. So if you want to look at that playlist for video recommendations, that's there. But the other cool things that are on there, that really this is what's been so fun lately. So the one I started this morning is called Free Audiobooks, because I don't know if this is even legal or not. Maybe it is. Hopefully it is. If it's not, I find out someday, I'll just take it down, do it and ask for forgiveness. But there are all these free audiobooks on YouTube where like you can listen to books that normally you would have to like pay $14.99 to listen to it on Audible. And like there's a free version on YouTube. So just because every once in a great while there might be someone who's like, I don't have any money to like invest in myself and in my self-development journey, like where do I even start? Like I'm broke. And it's like there is a mountain of content on YouTube and other places, lots of articles and stuff if you're more of a reader. I just happen to be more auditory, so I lean towards things like YouTube. But there's so much free stuff out there that we can learn from. So the free audiobooks is one. Another couple that I've started and have been putting lots of stuff that I've listened to on there. And I will say, like the free audiobooks one, I haven't listened to all of those, basically none of them. It's more like I want to listen to these lists. The other ones, though, the trauma contemplations and contemplating 12th house things, those two, I have listened to every single video that's on there, and I do highly recommend if you're wanting to contemplate those things, that those are some options. And so that's just been really fun, like a fun way to channel wanting to make recommendations of cool content that I found, and not wanting to like force it on anybody, but by golly, it's there if you want to take a look at it. So Yeah. Without further ado, let's just hop right into it this week. I have my notes. This process is working so good. I love a good process. Virgo South Node here. So I like it. I really just feel relieved. We can be organized and have a recipe, for lack of a better word, that works for me. And this recipe that I've found of making the notes in this way, it has really like I can still go with the flow all week long and like do the prep as it's fun to do. And if anything, it just organizes the prep that's fun to do when it's fun to do it. It kind of like gives a backbone to the flow. So I've been really loving the notes. Let me know what you think. The last couple episodes have had these notes. This is the third time I'm doing it. I feel like I've learned something about how I'm doing it each time. Like this time, I feel like I cut out like 30% of my content from last week. Like that's a huge drop in how many notes I actually have. Last week was a lot to just have to say, like a lot of talking, which I love to talk, don't get me wrong, but it was a lot to say and it left me with almost no time for the chat and questions and stuff. So I feel like today I have a little bit more flexibility to hopefully be in the chat a little bit more because I do love that side of it. But today we are going to go through Mercury entering Aries and being in Aries and what that looks like. Mercury is a fascinating planet, one of my favorites, and it will be in Aries from March 27th through April 11th. And then we will talk about the new moon in Aries, which is happening April 1st. And the new moon just means that the sun and the moon are at the exact same point in the sky. And this is super exciting. Um, Amidst everything else that is big shifts happening on our planet right now. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, unless you're living under a rock. I'm sure you're aware of this. Big shifts. And shifts sounds really neat and tidy. And what it feels like to me, and this is my personal experience, and if it doesn't resonate, that doesn't mean your experience is wrong or mine's right. This is just how I'm taking it, is like it feels like more of a clusterfuck than a shift. Shift sounds so linear, like it doesn't feel like that. It feels like there are all of these pieces that are being purged and brought to the surface to be released, and so much release and clearing out of old things that are no longer what is working. And here's all of this new space then. Meanwhile, here's like at the exact same time, simultaneously, here's all of these new things and new seeds getting planted, new initiations, new visuals of like, what do I even want to do with my life? Having these new images in our minds. And so like that's a lot to contain, like all at the same time. And so when we say the energy on the planet is shifting, there is so much at play. And that's where today, like Mercury in Aries and New Moon in Aries, we're going to be focusing in the Aries component. And I'm going to do my best to really take us deep into this component while also keeping it in context with like there's so much going on right now. So like how does focusing in this Aries energy, how does it help us in the bigger picture? Like we're always going to try to my best to zoom back out to the bigger picture and see, because if you just focused on Aries right now, you'd be a little bit confused because this is a softer Aries than usual. And this point slash conclusion slash observation comes from other astrologers who have been studying it for more than what I've been studying it, because this is only my second time to pay attention to Aries season, meaning like be really conscious of the energy as the sun moves through Aries. And so yeah, like I haven't been around the sun and seen a lot of Aries seasons, but I do understand what they mean about there's like all this Pisces energy still at play right now, and all of this Aquarius energy right behind that. And so the personal planets are really spread out. They're not all in Aries, and really just the sun right now and Chiron are in Aries, and Mercury will be there soon. So right now Aries is only one piece, and it always is only one piece. But for example, if you had all 5 personal planets in Aries, it would be a very like fiery, aggressive time. Like surface level, you would be able to see it, and we do see pockets of that. But honestly, those are coming from other deeper eruptions, not so much the surface level fire of Aries. But right now, Aries is only that one piece, and until we clear this Pisces energy that's really coming to a max on April 12th with the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, until we go through that, really the softness is going to still be there. The Pisces and Aquarius side of it is still going to be there, and that's where, like, especially when we look at the new moon, it's gonna, and it kind of already does, it kind of already feels like this vision of what I want is freaking gigantic and too big, like too big. Feel the vibration of this is too big, like the resistance in that, the self-doubt in that, the mistrust of the universe in terms of like, intellectually, I operate on the belief, and I'm working day by day to like bring it down into my body. But like, I believe that the universe gives us the peace that we're ready for when we're ready for it. So if you're having a vision of a dream or who you want to be in the world, that's, you see this vision of yourself, this leading edge version of yourself, and you're like, that's too big. It's too much. I don't know how to do that. That doesn't even seem possible. It seems far-fetched. And it's totally possible to be dreaming dreams like that because of all this Pisces energy, because of all the Aquarius energy, that visionary for the future of humanity. These are big, big dreams that, like, when you go all the way back to the beginning and consider that humans, animals, trees, rocks, it all is fragments of source energy. Like they're all extensions of source energy. So when you personally in your individual life have a dream or like a vision of who you want to become in the world, that's source energy having a dream about what it wants to create in the world. And so Aries energy is awesome as far as I can tell. Again, I'm newer to astrology and paying attention, like, versus what you can learn out of a book compared to like what you can actually feel in your body and know to be true for yourself. I also have Aries in the 12th house, and it's completely intercepted in the 12th house, which just means like Aries for me doesn't fall on a cusp. It's completely contained inside the 12th house. And I've, especially as soon as I learned from the astrologer who taught me that we all contain all 12 of the zodiac energies, one of the first ones that I was suspicious of that statement is like, I don't have Aries. Like, that's not in me. I don't have that self-assertive, like, aggressive side. And even as I say that, I'm like, how could you even think that? Because that side was in there all along. It just bubbled up out of nowhere when I was like really freaking pissed versus like accessible to me all the time. So it actually makes a lot of sense that it's like in my 12th house. But yeah, Aries. Aries has so much power for life, like is like the primal life force energy. So when we talk about like bold visions of who we want to be in the world, like that's kind of the main point that I want anybody watching this to walk away from is like, if you're having a vision of what you want, then know that it's possible, and that this season of all of this Aries energy, like, and it's beautiful that the personal planets are a little bit spread out right now, because that just means that we're going to go through like Sun and Mercury in Aries, and then coming behind that will be Venus, and then a little bit behind that will be Mars. So Aries energy will be with us, like kind of in this extended progression of the personal planets moving through there over the next several months. And this vision that you're probably already seeing, um, that it's a, like, it's all in how we think about it, all in our relationship to it. And for me, in the bigness of my vision, in the overwhelm of the bigness of my vision, My approach is basically to look at this as a helpful, intentional preview of what is coming. This is happening. Like, I've just taken it as fact. Like, okay, fine. Like, the universe gives me the piece I'm ready for. When I'm ready for it, this is happening. Done. Okay. My Taurus rising Capricorn midheaven Virgo South Node knows for a fact that nothing happens overnight. Everything that happens in the earth realm happens step by step by step by step. And that's it. That's the only way anything ever changes, is by one step at a time. So all of this Aries fire, all of this Pisces, like unbounded vision and intuition and dreams that are giving you crazy pieces and all kinds of things. This Aquarius vision of like, how can you personally, in your individuality, bring about the best possible future of humanity? Like, sit with that question for a minute and tell me the answer is not like, oh my God, like, how could I ever live up to that? So it's like right now we can have all of these huge ideas and pictures in our head, and allowing them to be there. And the Aries energy, where like really one of the primary pieces of Aries energy is to face fears, like allowing those pictures to be there and not talk yourself out of them, is the level of courage that I'm inviting you into. That, as far as like, that's what I'm working on, is like, how do you not just be too scared to start of your own vision? Like, it's huge. Yeah, it's a mountain. It's going to take me decades to climb this mountain of what I want to create. It's big. It's a big one. You can't ever get there if you don't start. And this series, these next few months of like all these personal planets moving through Aries and some other things that are happening, it's like such big, helpful energy to turn the tides in this direction and help us move in this direction. And then we have Jupiter coming along in May, May 10th. I have the exact dates when we get there a little bit here in a second. May 10th, Jupiter will enter Aries for a few months, and then it retrogrades and goes back into Pisces for a little bit, and then it'll come back to Aries for like its full transit. And that is supposed to be like, when Jupiter enters Aries for those few months, it'll go through like 0 to 8 degrees, I think. So it's supposed to be like right now, like all of these dreams and visions and everything that we're conceiving of and seeing, maybe even for the first time, wishing for the first time. It's like all of that, again, if you can let it be there and don't pick it apart with how the fuck am I going to do this, just let it be there. And then May comes around and Jupiter moves through Aries a little bit, and it's supposed to just like open it up and like, here's this, here's opportunities, here's pieces, here's the next bit of information, here's incremental steps, one step at a time. And right now, the challenge, I guess, if you want to call it that, at least for me, is to just let it be here and to not need to do it all, not need to be the version of myself that I can see in my head, to like still be okay that like, here I am now and I can see that. And that's really cool, because a week ago, like, I was not nearly as clear on what is this, like, where am I even trying to go? And so like, when you get that clarity of where you want to go, it's like, how do you handle it, and how is your relationship with it? So I know this might feel really drawn out, but I feel like as far as accomplishing things in the physical, like reaching your goals, or even just creating like any tiny change in your life that you want, like, I want to be happier. That's creating a change in your life. Okay, so like now we're in the realm of the physical. Like, how does it work in the physical? One step at a time, one day at a time. Like, that's just basic physics. Is like, you cannot, I mean, there is no teleportation yet, like yet. I think it could totally happen. I'm not going to be the first one in the pool though. Like, you could test it out on other people if you want. But I like, in the physical, it's helpful to stay grounded in that, and don't let the limitation of the physical become your limitation. Because if you can see it, you can get there. So having confidence in that is like all you got to do right now. Like you don't have to know how to get there to just know that like, yeah, I can probably figure it out along the way. So I'm going to pause here and look at my chat. Hello. So I'm just going to start at the bottom. Which house system do you use? I use Placidus, which is why it allows for intercepted signs. So like if you're using whole sign, for example, there wouldn't be such a thing as an interception. So this one says, as an Aries sun and rising, I always feel the fresh start of spring, but this time I feel as if STA is coming and I don't know what. Something maybe? Is that? I don't know what STH is, but that's, yeah, like there's so much brewing. And for more on diving into like what's brewing, I would go back to last week's conversation where we talked about in depth the Neptune Jupiter conjunction in Pisces. And, you know, there's all of this new coming, but again, a law of nature is like if the cup is full and you put more water in, like some water's going to have to come out. Like that's just facts. So right now and through Aries season, and this is really like tying us back to like this Aries energy of seeing who do you want to be in the world. When you say like, I am what? Like, who are you at your core? Who do you feel called to be? Like, what is this Aries season is about like starting the fight, or at least like knowing the fight that lights your soul on fire. Like life is hard. Life is very difficult. There are ups and downs always. There are challenges always. There are things to adapt to and overcome always. That's why we come here. That's why we want the physical. And like, how do you make it all worthwhile? How do you like make your life worth living? You apply your struggle and your challenge and your fight to something that you actually give a shit about. And that is a very personal question. That's a very personal like identity of who does your heart and soul feel called to be? Aries is the very first sign of the zodiac. It's that very first spark of life, the beginning of spring, birth, something new. And it comes right after Pisces, which is the 12th zodiac sign and is the end of our astrological year. And in Pisces, we go inward and we integrate all of the different pieces that we've collected from each of the signs, each of the seasons throughout the year. And then we package it all up and we feel it. And we, through that feeling process that happens mostly in our sleep, I think, we release it. And through that Pisces release, there is now room in the cup. There's now less water in the cup. So now you can pour some new water in. Aries energy brings in the new. So that's where we are. It's like we're stepping into the new. And don't kill your new with your thoughts of doubt and like tearing it apart by, I don't know how I'm going to get there. The astrology points to it will be revealed. The path will absolutely be revealed through lots of different transits of things that are going to happen. And so we're going to talk about it like week to week to week all along the way. And there's a faith and a self-trust that's like, you know, some people are there and will be able to do it. Some people, this will be a reach to trust yourself through this process. And that kind of might be the reason that you're in the process now, is to build and practice that self-trust. And for others, they won't be able to withstand the self-doubt. The hugeness of their vision will be too much, and their vision won't get created in the world. And you know, that's life. Some people do and some people don't. Like, it's how bad do you want it? And this Aries season, the part where this little component in the bigger picture, this is turning up the volume big time on how bad do you want it? Like, Aries is where we fight for what we deserve. We fight for what we are rightfully owed for being alive on this planet. And I'm telling you, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling like, okay, yeah, if I got going in the right direction, I do have some fight in me. I have some intensity that I could point towards something. Yeah, I have that. Okay, never mind. I don't tell the story anymore about, I don't have Aries energy, I don't know where it is. I know where it is. I just have to get pointed in the right direction to be able to find it. And then it just rises right up there to the surface. So that was a really long introduction, but a really good overview for the rest of the episode. So I've gotten some feedback on occasion that, my long content is really long, and that's just how I roll. So, apologies in advance, but this is what I am. So yeah, especially in Aries season, that feels really good to like say, I make long content because I'm a gambler. And if you need the short version, I think that was it. So yeah, very good. Okay. So, like I said, we're going to talk about Mercury and then the new moon. And both of this centers around Aries. And since I did talk about Aries in detail last week, and that was using the Book of Fire by Stephen Forrest, I didn't want to just repeat that. So I did the Jan Spiller book, Astrology for the Soul, which specifically is the North Node. Like it's talking about if you have an Aries North Node, like these are your goals. This is the behavior that you're trying to develop. Um, but I personally think that book, Astrology for the Soul, the North Node one, is very helpful for just trying to find that energy inside yourself at all. So, like, let's say your Saturn was in a particular sign, say Scorpio, and you're like, I don't get it. I don't know what Scorpio feels like. I don't know what that is. Listen to the Scorpio North Node chapter and see if you can't really tune in to your Scorpio Saturn on a deeper level. Obviously, the whatever planet you have there is going to make a little bit of a difference. But for finding the energies internally, that book is very helpful. So Aries, an overview is kind of how we talked about, like Pisces is the end of the zodiac, and it's where we release everything from the year and we merge with the divine, we merge with our higher selves, and we merge with the all. Like when you trace back every single being's energy, you wind back up at source or the all. And so Pisces is a very divine, mystical time, and it's beautiful, but you're merged with the all. And in Aries, when we step over that boundary in the sky of, okay, now it's Aries season, and we know that because the light on the planet shifts. Like we're now in the light half of the year. But when that happens, there is a regathering of all of your own identity. Like merging with the all is great, and that's Pisces, and we still have all that energy in Pisces, and we're not done there. But there is also Aries. And in Aries energy, we are encouraged, and really we have to pull our energy back to ourselves, at least somewhat, to have any energy to then go and do the things that are important to you, to fight the fights that actually matter. So there's a reclaiming of our energy, a reclaiming of our identity. This is also like a fun time to just kind of bring in the cycle of things. Like, this is the start of the astrological new year, and you are different. Like I am different than I was in March of 2021. Like we have made a whole trip around the sun. Like, and so now you are different, you are expanded, you are changed in some way. And who are you now? So answering this question of this like Aries boldly stepping forward and saying to the world who you are, it changes over time, and what you want and what's important to you and what matters to you changes over time. So just like when we go through New Year's, like December 31st to January 1st on the calendar year, this time also is very much about like redeclaring to yourself, to the world, to the universe. They can feel you. You don't need to say it out loud, but like, who are you now and what matters to you now? And the universe can get behind you 1,000,000%, and is doing that all the time. And the only thing that ever stops stuff from manifesting in the physical is when you yourself take yourself out of the creative conversation by doubting that it's even possible. You give up, you stop trying. And so now it doesn't happen, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So yeah, like if you can believe this season is huge for energizing the whole rest of the next year. This is like the seeds, the sprouts that are going to come up, that are going to grow and bloom and produce flowers and fruit and a harvest in and around Pisces season come about next spring. So yeah, exciting times, so fun. Feels so good. So self-discovery, that is really the point of Aries energy, that, you know, when we talk about fighting the fight that matters to you, maybe you have an answer to that and maybe you don't, because that's where I was for a good long while, was like, I don't have a fight in me. I don't passion. Like, I was trying to look up the definition of the word passion, because again, like I don't have passions. I don't have hobbies. Like, what are you talking about? And if that's where you are, and that's very much where I was, and I was kind of reflecting on this whole process that has unfolded this last decade, self-discovery is really the first step of like knowing who you are. And that's why doing new things, putting yourself in new situations, meeting new people, anything new, anything with the word new in front of it, food, people, places, things, doesn't matter, new stuff. You get to see new sides of yourself. When you experience new stimuli, you get to experience a new reaction. And when you experience your own reaction for the first time, there's knowledge in that. There's self-discovery in that. And so if you're starting at square one of like, I have no idea what fight I feel like fighting, then maybe just spend the month doing new things, challenging yourself to do one new thing a week, or, you know, couple things a week, or whatever you can reach for in the moment. It's about finding the rung on the ladder that you can reach. There's no right starting point. There's the rung on the ladder that you can reach to get yourself up to the next one. So if where you are is self-discovery, trying new things is very helpful for that. And with this, I also wanted to spend just a little bit of time and talk about some other self words that are also associated with Aries. And the first couple are selfish and self-centeredness. And this is one of the insults that Aries often receives, is that they're basically not controllable. God damn them. They won't let me manipulate them. They won't let me just boss them around. Like, how can I get my Aries boyfriend to listen to what I say? Like, what? Get a different boyfriend. I don't know. Like, that's just, he's not going to listen. Like, that's just not how Aries energy works. Like, selfish and self-centered, it has such a negative connotation that society has brewed for it, but it doesn't mean that. Like, it basically translates to like a self-protective vibration. Like, if you really sink down to where selfishness and self-centeredness comes from, that self-orientation, that self-protectiveness, it is a mechanism to increase the chances that you're going to create what you're dreaming about in your head. So when you're not being bossed around by other people, when you're not being manipulated and just giving into whatever they're doing or whatever they want, or nurturing to other people instead of taking care of yourself, your chances of manifesting your dreams in the world, it just shrinks with every moment of your attention that isn't on you. Your chance of manifesting your shit in the world, it goes up with every minute you spend focusing on yourself. And so it's like, Aries is only one of the zodiac signs. It's about balance. We're not meant to just always focus on ourselves. That's not what I'm saying. But there are a lot of people that come to see me in my one-on-one practice. And when we get to the self-care conversation, basically every time, it's like, but it's selfish. I feel selfish when I'm doing this, when I'm, you know, my dishes aren't done, my house hasn't been vacuumed, my kids don't have dinner on the table, whatever. Like, how can I just take an hour and go to the gym? Like, that feels really selfish of me to do that. It leaves all them hanging. And it's like, yeah, I mean, again, it's about balance, and it's about, what do you want? Do you want them to be well taken care of? Then make their dinner. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want your dreams to manifest, if you, in this case, like the gym example, you want your health, how bad do you want it? You know, you have to, every single moment. That's another restriction of the physical world, is that in every single moment you have to choose. Like, what do you want the most? And your actions are basically showing you what you're choosing. And it's about being more conscious of that. And again, as all of these personal planets move through Aries, the volume knob just gets turned up pretty loud for how bad do you want it? Like, you want it because this is not just your dream, your silly little dream. This is source energy dreaming a dream through you, and you get to see the vision of it so that you will go and create it. So, wanting it, how bad do you want it? Like, that's a really big, big piece. Self-discovery is huge for me. Since I discovered myself, I feel I found the friend I couldn't see before. That is so beautiful. And becoming your own best friend, I feel like that's another good, like if you're starting from square one, as far as like, I don't know what fight I want to fight. Like, again, self-discovery, spending time with yourself, like I just naturally spend a lot of time on myself. So I don't really talk about the fact that I do these things, but they have been really helpful to my spiritual practice. And so maybe now is a good time. But like solo vacations, and if you're like in your head thinking like, I can't afford a vacation, I don't have the time for blah, blah, blah. I started way smaller than a vacation. I started by going to the movies by myself. And that worked me up to going to like brunch by myself, like in a little cafe or whatever. And that worked me up to traveling by myself. And that, like going out in public and like being there by yourself is, I don't know, like I'll have to put some thought into that as far as like what I feel like it gave me. But it definitely resonates in this category of becoming your own best friend, of like your company counts as being in somebody's company. Like, technically, you're never alone because you always have yourself. And anytime we're feeling lonely, which was something that I felt a shit ton back in the day, back in my depressed days, I felt lonely and isolated and misunderstood. And as I unraveled the spiritual path that I've lived so far, it was extremely obvious to me that the world was simply reflecting to me that I was not friends with myself. I didn't know myself. I wasn't spending time in a meaningful way with myself. And I didn't understand myself. So how the fuck are they supposed to understand me if I don't understand me? So that that spending time on your own, the solitude, and then especially like taking that show out in public, which at this point with the, everything, there may be fewer places that you can go, but again, there are ways to start small and to see what that feels like. I'm curious, like if anybody like does solo vacations, have you ever had one? Um, Also, as part of that solo vacation, the very first one I did, I went to an ashram, like a yoga retreat in the Bahamas. And it was like, it was incredible. I was there for 12 days, and it was one of the, I would say up to that point, it would be like one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Like probably a little bit of a dark night of the soul, like the first 5 days. Days 2 through 6, I didn't speak. I just was quiet, meaning I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't say anything out loud. I was just quiet. Um, and then by the end of it, like I feel like I had like shed a skin of everything that I was confronted with those first 5 days, like that kind of brought to the surface, and like so much crying, so much crying, so much like just desperation and like an aching, empty loneliness. And it was such a shedding. That's like the only word that I can reach for it. And out of it, there was a new me. There was a transformation that happened on that vacation, and it was amazing. Um, Big, huge tangent, but because all of this, like, okay, so here's where I was. Let me pick back up in my notes. Was selfish and self-centeredness. Really, on the high frequency side of how you can see that is self-trust and self-love, that you value yourself enough to listen to yourself You value yourself enough to not let yourself be hurt. You value yourself enough to use your time in the way that you want to use it for the objectives that you find important. And again, like going back to like, yeah, we're saying your vision and your goals and all of that, and it makes it look like, okay, yeah, you're more important than all these other things. And it's like kind of, but at the same time, remember going back to we're all extensions of source energy. And if you have like a pure dream, a pure vision of who you want to be in the world, especially if that's pure, chances are like you're showing up in service somewhere. You want to do something, you want to create art, you want to make people happy, you want to like some way, there's some kind of service in there somewhere. And because again, these are source energies dreams really that are coming through us. And so when you are having a dream like I want to do XYZ that is going to bring about the best possible future of humanity. Let's say that's your goal, that's your dream. And now, yeah, you're not willing to let other people distract you. You're going to let your kids fend for themselves because I'm over here enacting a better future for all of humanity and you guys are 19 years old. Like you can do it yourself. So at a certain point, you have to choose between like, what do I actually want and what's important to me and what is my vision of service? And that ability to trust yourself is really the highest frequency of Aries energy. Is basically you're validating yourself. You're validating that my dream is worth pursuing. My dream is worth taking time away from these other people because my dream is really important for it to exist in the world. So this, oh, that just like feels so good. Yes, 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 yes. Validate and give approval to yourself. Doing all of this is helping you to support yourself in actualizing your own dreams. Do you believe in the value of your dreams? Like, do you think that your dreams are worth pursuing? And when you've found the right dream, like all this Aries energy moving through, it feels like that just like it really does feel like a lightning bolt of like, I want this. I need this. I need to be this. I can see it so clearly that like this is the next evolution of who I am in this world. And that is so exciting. And yeah, and. Ooh, so this is a fun little story of communicating your boundaries. And that's a video that, well, so Dr. K on Healthy Gamer, he did a video on March 23rd about setting boundaries. And it is like an hour and 20 minutes long. He goes through it. It is so good. I highly recommend that video, especially right now for these Aries season. If especially if where you're coming from is like to clear space to have room for the new stuff, you're going to have to take time away from old things. You'll have to release some obligations, some responsibilities, whatever. It's like that video might be really timely as far as how can you communicate your boundaries to these people that now you need to shift. And so the story comes from the Jan Spiller book, Astrology for the Soul. And basically, I'm going to paraphrase it as best as I can remember it, but a master goes to a village and he sees no children playing. And he asks, why, where are all the children? Why are there no children? And somebody says, there is a serpent who lives in the forest who comes at nighttime and eats the children. And the master, he's like Zen master or whatever, he is like, oh my goodness. And he faces the darkness immediately and he marches into the forest and he demands the serpent to show himself. And the serpent is still apparently under the master. So he comes out and they have this conversation. And you gotta love like old tales. It's just like fairy tales for grown-up people. And so the serpent comes out and the master asks him or tells him, you cannot eat these children. Don't eat the children. There's much violence in that. Don't eat the children. And so the serpent says, yes, master, I will not eat the children. And so a decade later, the master, he comes back by this little village and there's all these children of all ages playing in the village. And he goes to find the snake and he can't find him. And so he comes back and he sees that all these children are gathered around and the serpent is in the middle, and the children have like been torturing the serpent and he's almost dead. And the master asks the serpent, why have you let this happen to you? Like, why didn't you defend yourself? And he said, oh, but master, you told me don't eat the children. He said, I told you don't eat the children. I didn't say you couldn't hiss. And her point is Aries season, and well, Aries North Node especially, but this Aries season, I feel like for all of us, we're learning to hiss. We're learning to warn. Like, you think about like a cat who hisses, like it's a warning to say, don't come closer. Like, you hiss because this is my boundary. This is where you're crossing a line of what no longer works for me. And then you hiss. So that idea like landed in my consciousness like a lightning bolt. Is like, you're just learning to hiss. You're not ripping somebody's head off. You're not taking a machete to their entire person. You're just telling them to back off. You're just saying, this is my space. And I'm like, wow, that really turned self-assertiveness in a way that it was more approachable for me. It was like a lower rung on the ladder. It's like when I felt before, like asserting myself is hard or standing up for myself is hard. It's like I felt like I was hurting them because every time I've stood up for myself, I end up blowing up like a freaking volcano because I've let myself be stepped on so many times that finally it's like, and I don't like that. I don't like that side of myself. And that was my association with Aries, was like attack. And it's like, no, you don't have to eat the children, just hiss at them and they will leave you alone. So Aries North Node people especially, but I think all of us, learning to hiss at the first sign of abuse is a strong word, but like really any crossing my boundaries, that's not cool. I don't like it when you make a joke about my whatever. I don't find it funny. And there are some times that, like, looking back on my life as I tell this story, like, I wish I could have just said that, like, in the moment. Like, I don't think that joke is funny. I really would appreciate it if you wouldn't joke about those things in the future. Thank you. Like, to even go that far to, like, that's not even hissing. That's not even mean. That's just saying, this is what works for me. So please don't do that. That's be great. So yeah, it all comes back down though to that self-trust. And do you believe that you are right enough to like exist? Like, do you believe that your dream deserves to exist? And again, that's like for everybody. We're kind of all on this journey. Thank you, Maddie, putting the Dr. K video in there. So Mercury is also something that we've talked about recently. So I didn't want to do a bunch of repeats. So I have some other little fun facts about Mercury. Mercury is the ruler of two signs, Gemini and Virgo. Gemini is the masculine face of Mercury, and Virgo is the feminine face of Mercury. It goes through the most retrogrades. It goes retrograde 3 to 4 times a year because it's the fastest orbit around the sun. It's the closest to the sun and is the fastest moving planet. And so because of that, it's fastest moving. It represents thought, like the speed of thought. Think about how fast you can think compared to how fast you can talk, compared to how fast you can write. I mean, you try to speak out loud, you try to put it into words, and you have to slow down a lot compared to how fast your brain can move through information. And so Mercury's the fastest moving planet, and that's why it represents our thoughts. That's one of the things that it represents. We'll get to more. But if it's only direct, like it will be through Aries, it's moving through Aries March 27th through April 11th. So if it's only direct, it moves through a sign in 15 days. So that's how long that is, March 27th through April 11th. It's like 2 weeks that we're gonna have Mercury in Aries. So as we talk about Mercury in Aries, just remember, this is a short window to like make the most of it as far as what we're gonna talk about. But if Mercury goes retrograde and the retrograde is completely contained within a sign, so like let's say it goes all the way to the end of Capricorn, which this is what it's going to do at the end of this year. It's going to go all the way to the end of Capricorn, and then it's going to turn retrograde. So it's going to go almost to the beginning of Capricorn, and then it's going to turn back and it'll go all the way back through the end of Capricorn. It'll move into Aquarius. And that process takes 68 days. So compare 15 days in some signs, 68 days in other signs. And so, yeah, Aries Mercury, teeny tiny little window. And Capricorn Mercury this year, anyway, these will always shift, but Capricorn Mercury this year, we're going to get it for like 2.5 months. And that feels really purposeful, especially where just coming off this past winter, we had Venus basically do the same thing. It was in Capricorn for like 3 months because of its retrograde. It just like went back and forth across Capricorn. So yeah, and Capricorn energy is very helpful for like building the actual structure of what you're going to do. Mercury in Capricorn, brilliant at building stuff, like just seeing how to build it. Like you have a goal, easy peasy. You just do these backwards, like reverse engineering steps, and that gets you back to here. So step by step by step, done. Capricorn, oh, so good. So that window is coming at the end of this year from December 6th of 2022 through February 11th of 2023. And I put that in there specifically because kind of drawing back to this bigger picture and these visions and dreams that we're having right now, that these are seeds that are going into the ground and that they will be sprouting and we will have work to do with them later on. Like, and that's okay, that time is coming. And like this 68 days of Mercury in Capricorn at the end of this year and into next, that's one of those windows where we will be getting really clear for an extended period of time on how to structurally in the physical move our entire vision forward. And there will be real progress that happens at that point and at other points before that in this year. But that's one such window where we're going to move the vision forward and we can trust that that will happen. So all of these retrogrades that happen, because Mercury moves so fast, the retrogrades as it turns backwards and then goes back over that same territory, it's making sure that we didn't forget anything. It's integrating all of the new things that you've learned since the last retrograde, letting those things sink down into your subconscious, into your body. Mercury is also known as the messenger of the gods and basically takes on two different archetypes, the teacher and the storyteller. And both of those, the teacher and the storyteller, are both inextricably intertwined with language and speaking and vocalizing, whether you're writing or actually speaking out loud. You can't tell a story or be a teacher unless you're going to do some form of that. And that's why Mercury rules over teachers and students. And so when we look at your Mercury placement in your chart, we can actually understand like how you best learn, like who is your best teacher. We can learn a lot about that by looking at your Mercury placement. Yeah. Shay says that she does everything by herself, and it's almost all I know, at least my whole adult life. Yeah, that's a lot how I feel. Like I've gone places with people, like I've done stuff with people, and actually traveling with someone then is like your new territory, you know, like, or like doing things with other people would be your new territory. If you have extensive experience, like doing it by yourself and seeing that side of yourself, traveling with someone and seeing that side of yourself, because yeah, it's a whole different, you see a whole different side of yourself, not just like traveling with another person, but like traveling with this friend or traveling with that friend or this person or that person. Like, yeah, it's a whole, like there are some people that I've traveled with that I'm like, I'm never fucking doing that ever again. And, or like, this is why I like to travel by myself, but it's all just shadow work. It all just like pushes your buttons. And when you spend 6 days on a trip around the world with someone, like, yeah, you get right in there next to their buttons, and the prolonged exposure, you just almost can't help it. But anyways, so Mercury represents your best teacher. Let's see. This is really helpful for me, and maybe that's just my Mercury and the way that I process. But this comes from the Book of Water the Book of Air by Stephen Forrest, um, in the Gemini chapter, and he says Mercury is data in, data out. So communication is the word that's usually used to describe Mercury, but data in, data out means how do you listen? How do you perceive the world around you? And how then do you turn around and like communicate back outwardly with whoever's there? And so data in, data out. Mercury itself, the planet itself, represents a mirror. Like, think about a perfect mirror, data in, data out. It's showing you exactly what is. There's no bias, there's no agenda, there's no like trying to make you look a certain way, not trying to hurt your feelings. None of that. Mercury itself is a perfect mirror. And Mercury is never not in a sign. So, like, none of us are a perfect mirror. None of us are unbiased. We are all biased. And that's something that's like really helpful to understand, because I think a lot of people argue, especially on the internet, probably not the people listening to this, but that there's so many people out there arguing like they're not biased. They're like over here calling other people biased, like they're not also. And we are all biased. We can't help it. It's because our planets are in signs. And when you put Mercury in a sign, you basically are saying, like, this is how you pay attention. Out of all 12 ways that you can pay attention, you pay attention like this. That's what your Mercury sign says. And then the house is kind of another layer of this is how you pay attention. The aspects that it's making, this is again like how and when and why you pay attention. And so none of us are that perfect mirror. We all have a filter that we are using to take in the world around us. And so Mercury placement shows us data in, it shows us how we listen, which is why it can tell us who our best teacher is. And then it also tells us data out. It tells us, like, how is this person likely to express? So signs, houses, and aspects, they're what filter or restrict your perception of the world. So none of us have a completely open, unbiased perception. Perspection? Perception. Perspection. Oh, perspection. That's a good one. None of us have an unbiased perception of the world. Stephen Forrest goes so far as to say, like, you would basically wind up in the nut house. Like, you just can't take in that much information. Like, as a human, like, you would just be overwhelmed. So it's just not productive. So to be productive, you limit yourself to just one. And now here's how I pay attention. So that's what your Mercury sign is telling us. So with that, it represents the person's intelligence, their thinking style, and what and where and how they're likely to be curious. Mercury is also said to be like your lesson, that like we all have something to learn, and that there can be a lot wrapped up in your Mercury placement about like you learning how you interact with the world around you, basically, because that's what communication is us interacting with the world around us. Also, tapping into our Mercury placement can point us towards our true voice, our natural voice. And that is like where basically we tap into a place of speaking and listening from our heart, not just chirping just to let people know that we exist. Like there's a little bit of a difference. Um, and when we're chirping just so people know we exist, chances are we don't really get listened to, because when we're chirping just so people know we exist, and this is kind of on that Aries spectrum of like low frequency to high frequency, when we're chirping so people know we exist, we're basically asking for their validation instead of validating ourselves. And especially in Aries season, I would imagine, and especially if you carry a lot of Aries energy, you're not here to be validated by others. You're here to validate yourself. So, like, learning how to validate yourself so that you don't need that from other people, like, that's a big piece to opening up into your Mercury placement and your natural voice and letting it look like whatever it looks like, instead of, this is how other people make their videos, or this is the kind of stuff other people do, or like, you know, there are so many boxes that we can feel the need to put ourselves in. And Mercury, especially when you get down into like the house and its aspects and everything else that you have going on with it, it's like a roadmap to, like, if you want to be heard and taken seriously in this world, you need to come at it from your Mercury placement, your natural voice. Like, there was one question a while back. It was on the, I want to say it was on like the Sagittarius North Node video that I did, but I could be wrong about that. But essentially, the recommendation in the video that I said was that, like, speak your truth, that like people will really appreciate it, that, this is your purpose, this is what you're supposed to do. And somebody with that placement asked a question like, I feel like I do speak my truth, and people, they don't listen, they don't want to hear it, that's my scenario, like, what do you think's going on here? And at the time I was like, that's really interesting, I don't know. And without the whole natal chart, you just really don't know. But that did come back to me as far as thinking here about the Mercury placement. And just because you have a Sagittarius North Node, for example, or a ninth house North Node for that matter, and speaking your truth is absolutely what you should be doing, that that doesn't really tell us like how should you be speaking your truth, like what is your natural voice, like what is your Mercury placement, your house, your aspects, all of that. So that was something that, especially if you feel like people don't listen when you talk, investigating your Mercury and like how authentic is your voice, that's a great place to go with that reflection. And that Mercury's path, before we speak, we learn. So that's where, again, going back to your Mercury placement, our Mercury path begins with learning Mercury's lesson. And that looks different for everybody. Like for me, for example, so I have Mercury in Gemini. That is probably obvious to anybody who knows a little bit about astrology. And it is exactly conjunct my Venus, and it's in my second house. And those are the only two things in my second house, unless you put the asteroids in the chart, and then there's lots of stuff in there. But anyways, so I have had to accept my voice, like my unique voice. And one of the pieces is my tendency to free associate. Like when I start telling a story, it reminds me of this thing. So now I'm over here. And then it reminds me of this thing. And now I'm over here. And I don't I don't really finish most of the stories or most of the points that I ever bring up. I usually never get to the end of it before I'm already jumping over here to the next thing. And that used to be like a real bummer for me. Like in high school, I did public speaking, because that's like my long-term vision is like professional public speaker and make a living doing speeches. And so I was practicing in high school. I was doing public speaking contests and whatnot. And they have two options. There's prepared and there's extemporaneous. And extemporaneous means that about 2 hours before you give the speech, you draw out of a hat your topic, and then you go and you write your speech in those 2 hours, and then you come back and you present the speech that you wrote. And it's like an 8-minute time slot that you're supposed to talk for. And at the time, I was like, no way, no, oh my gosh, I could never do that. So I only ever did the prepared public speaking, where you like wrote a whole 8-page speech and then you delivered it having it memorized. That was like the only way I would do it, because if I was going to go extemp, if I didn't have it memorized, I'd be all over the place, and that would be the end of the world. And now, like, I think about last week, like I was on stream for like 2.5 hours. Yes, I have notes, but mostly like it's free associating. It's like jumping all over the place. And so much of that was thanks to, like, I started my podcast about 6 months after I started studying astrology, and so much of my courage and willingness to put my voice out there was reading about, like, one, if your chart, like, whatever your chart is, it's exactly perfect. It's exactly the way that it's supposed to be. And so here I am with Mercury and Gemini. It makes me like this. And I have an issue. I have a list of issues with me being this way, except this is perfect. So, like, it took me a while, to, like, rectify all of that, reconcile all of that, and embrace, first accept and then embrace that this is how I am. This is how my natural voice is. When I am working off a script, my voice is empty and lifeless. When I'm speaking from my heart and allowing the free association that happens as it happens, like, that's the best. That's your best shot at getting people to hear you. And at least you're doing it in a way that's authentic and feels good and true to who you are. Um, like Jim Carrey, he credits a lot of his success to, like, growing up with his dad, having wanted to be a comedian, but being a comedian, like, wasn't paying the bills, so he became an accountant. And then after, like, 25 years of being an accountant, the firm, like, fired him. I could be getting some of those numbers wrong, but this is the gist of it. He was like 50, also kind of your Chiron return thing, and he had foregone his dreams, and he got laid off from that shitty job that he settled for at his Chiron return. And I was like, well, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? But that made Jim Carrey's family homeless while he was in high school, and his dad became really bitter, and, like, it just was kind of the downhill slide into the end of his dad's life. And Jim Carrey, watching that, he's like, like, they asked him, like, when did you know that you were going to pursue comedy, that you wanted to be an actor or whatever? And he's like, I mean, it just wasn't ever even a choice. Like, it was just, I saw the alternative that you can fail at doing something that you don't even love. Like, they can lay you off after 2 decades of you doing something that you didn't even like. You can still fail. Or you can at least try what's right for you. And at least if you do that, then, it's kind of like one of those, like, really cliche sayings of, like, shoot for the moon and you'll land amongst the stars. It's like that. So, Mercury in Aries. Yes. Okay. This, like, basically you take this boldness and all of that, and you combine it with Mercury, which is data in, data out. It's like when you put all that together, data in, data out about yourself, like self-discovery in overdrive and self-awareness in overdrive, and bringing up your subconscious patterns of self is like, those are rising to the surface so that you can meet them as the new version of you that you are now. So in this last trip around the sun, since Mercury was in Aries last year, like, you've healed a lot. You've moved in a different direction. You've done things that you're proud of. You've learned lessons that have helped you. And now you stand here. And so this Mercury through Aries, this centering of our minds in this Aries self place is extremely helpful for putting some words, like getting a little bit more awareness and clarity around who am I. Mercury's, like, here to help start turning that into some kind of expression, even if you only wrote it in your journal. You don't have to tell it to anybody else for you to move it through your voice, your center of manifestation, and out into the world. It's not about convincing anybody else. It's only ever about you believing in it. This Aries season is about you believing in it. So Mercury in Aries, I feel like, is very helpful for bringing up situations and conversations that are maybe a little bit confronting, but, like, in a really productive way. And depending on where you're at with your Aries energy, if you are, like, spending a lot of time in Aries already because you have lots of planets there or whatever, and you're usually in the lower frequencies, Mercury through Aries, it can just bring a lot of fights to the surface. So if there's a lot of, like, pent up aggression or anything like that, like, it can just, like, bring those things out. So Yeah, like there's shadow and there's light to every single transit, and basically, if there's anybody in your life where you normally are walking on eggshells when you are around them, I probably just wouldn't see them from March 27th through April 11th. I would just not go there because chances are you're not going to walk on eggshells. They're going to be upset. You're going to feel like shit because you said something that you shouldn't have said because it just popped out your mouth. And if you don't want that, if there's that kind of relationship dynamic where you're holding the lid on things, this is not the time to engage in that relationship because it is probably not going to stay on. And again, that can be really productive. Like if there's a relationship in your life that you're walking on eggshells and like that's just what it is, you got to ask yourself, why are you doing this? Why are you walking on eggshells for this person's comfort, for the sake of this relationship? Like sometimes that's necessary and I may be okay, like if it's required in your life for whatever reason. But maybe this Aries season is a time where we can like put that in its place. If there's somebody who you feel like you have to walk on eggshells and all of that to be around them, I mean, how much time are you spending around them versus spending around people where you feel like, if you said something in the moment that was authentic and it popped out of your mouth, is it going to be well received or are you going to be like hurting somebody's feelings and they're going to hate you or whatever, they're going to be mad. So it's a time to like kind of evaluate how much can your circle handle your authentic self, because during all of these personal planets, Mercury is only one of them, right? We have Venus and Mars coming soon. As these planets move through Aries, we naturally can't help but become a little bit more our authentic selves. It just naturally comes out of us. And if the people that you're spending time with don't authentically like the real you, they will likely be really aggravated by the version of yourself that you're demonstrating during these next few months. So rather than thinking like, oh, they don't like me, those just aren't the right people. Like if that's what's happening, if they're aggravated with you or you're offending them or whatever the case is, there's tension and stress in the relationship, you got to ask yourself, right people for me. And again, maybe it's something like this is my parent and I don't feel like I want to sever that relationship or whatever. Like sometimes you have to figure out how to just set boundaries and stay in a relationship, even though maybe it's not exactly making your heart sing. But a lot of times, like, I think we put a little bit too many people in that bucket of like, you know, like right now, that's reminding me of the time that I skipped my family's Thanksgiving, which I've only ever, well, at that time, I'd only ever done it once. That was the first time. And it was a big deal. Like, obviously, they were confused and a little bit upset that I wasn't going to come. And Thanksgiving's my favorite holiday. Like, that's my absolute favorite time to be with my family. And I chose not to go there because it did not feel good to me to go there. And that boundary of like doing what I wanted to do, like honoring myself. I was journaling this morning, is why it's so fresh in my head, about like my spiritual path and how my spiritual path was born out of my weight loss journey. And how like one of the main turning points in my spiritual journey was skipping that family Thanksgiving. Was like, I I'm just not gonna go there. Like this relationship is like this much value in my life versus this much aggravation. And I have this much vacation time to rest, recharge, regenerate, whatever. And I'm not going to give it to you. Like, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to put this time towards, like, I went back to the Bahamas again. I went and had Thanksgiving with my friends, and I spent that time doing things that did feel like they were giving me this much value and this much aggravation. Like, my time is mine to choose how to spend. And budgeting your time is one of the biggest places you can like take your power back. Is like, not to say budgeting your time like you need to like write down what you're going to do every hour, more like you get to decide how much time you spend with each and every person in your life. And if there's a relationship that you don't like or that you dread having to see these people, or it's boring, or worse, like they're, making you uncomfortable or attacking you or whatever, like yeah, this is a season of, is that really what you want? Like, you deserve such good things, such good things. You deserve the best stuff. And so often we settle for stuff that isn't the best stuff. And Aries season is a time where we're going to see, like, are there things that we've been settling for? Because chances are it's going to be a little bit aggravating these next couple months. When we shrink ourselves down to fit in places where we don't belong, like when these kinds of seasons roll around, it's like we get bigger and we can feel just how cramped we are by these circumstances that we have willingly, voluntarily participated in the past. So again, I point you back to the boundaries video because it's a season of like taking things and allowing more space for yourself. Mm. Maddie says, I have Mercury and Aries conjunct my IC. Definitely a big lesson in my life to learn to speak my unique truth with confidence. Yeah. Mm. And then Shay wants to know, did you grow up in a family where you had to speak up to get your needs met? That's an interesting question. And Shay, I'm wondering why you ask. Oh, hers is in Pisces. Mercury in Pisces conjunct Jupiter in Pisces in the 3rd house. That's an interesting combination right there. Wow. Because Pisces, and the reason I say that is because Pisces, I realized I was just thinking all these things in my head, where it's fast and easy to just jump right through a big river. So Pisces and Gemini are square on the zodiac wheel. They are like at odds with each other. And so when you think about like Pisces in the 3rd house, I always think that's a very interesting placement because like they're fundamentally very different things. So yeah, I'd have to really, really put some thought into that or whatever the hell. Aries sun, Leo moon, and Gemini rising or ascendant or whatever the hell. So like, will my card get declined later and talk about for lunch? I don't know that. I don't know about that. Aries sun. Happy birthday this month, by the way, to all the Aries suns. And I'm a Leo moon, a Gemini. Interesting. Okay. Let's see. What else do I have on here? So takeaways, Mercury and Aries, learning to hiss. You don't have to eat the children to hiss and protect yourself, protect your dream, protect your right to pursue your dream. All of those things we're learning to hiss. Learning to better enforce our boundaries is basically what that is. We're also, and this is over the next several months, I would say, right now with Mercury and Aries, Mercury is a more, well, and I guess I'm more talking about the Gemini Mercury side of things, which definitely resonates a little bit more with me since my Mercury is in Gemini. But it's like that masculine face of Mercury is very detached, very just observational. Like, this is the fact. This is what is. Like, it's not emotional. There's no ego. It's that perfect mirror. Gemini Mercury is like the closest thing to the perfect mirror that has no bias. And so while we have Mercury moving through Aries, I'm guessing that we will become aware. So again, kind of going full circle with where we started, like we're becoming more aware of where we want to be. And as we become more aware of where we want to be, we're more aware of the gap between where I am and where I want to be. And Mercury is kind of coming through here soon to help build that awareness, to elevate our sense of self, to elevate our self-love, our self-discovery, our self-awareness. Like, what really is important to you? Those are important questions to answer. And if you're elevating your perception of yourself, the chances of you supporting yourself and meeting your own dreams goes up substantially. The chance of your dreams coming true goes up substantially. So Mercury is just the first one. As we have Venus come through, Venus represents our values and how we value ourself. And so again, as Venus comes through Aries later on, like the that's just going to jack that way back up to like, again, a bigger sense of self, that like as you yourself get bigger and you know yourself better, you love yourself more, you believe more in yourself, you have a harder and harder time fitting into the tiny little cramped places you were sitting before. So again, naturally, when we get into Aries season and the rebirth, we have to factor in the fact that we're coming off Pisces energy and there's still a lot going on where things have to vacate before the new can make its way into our life. So that's I don't know. Mercury is rising. I don't know that terminology, but that doesn't mean much because I get asked the question all the time, how long have I been studying? About 18 months. I think it might be 19 now, but pretty close. And started in August of 2020. And I am self-taught with some books and some internet videos and things like that, piecing it together. But I do find it fascinating, and it resonates on a level of like, I just can feel that astrology is real and it's true. And yeah, it has been absolutely life-changing for me to study these things. So I thank you for letting me do my Gemini Free Association thing for you here every Friday morning. So yeah, good times. So I'm gonna have a little bit of this. And then I'm gonna talk about the moon, the new moon in Aries on April 1st, which just means the new moon just means that the sun and the moon are both in Aries at the exact same point. That's how we know when the new moon is. So at 11 degrees Aries, the sun and the moon. So we will talk about the moon, and then we'll do just a little bit about the new moon itself, and then we'll talk about Aries new moon. And in general, like it's just really interesting to think about like which house is Aries in for you. And specifically this 11 degrees of Aries. So if like Aries is in two different houses, for example, if you're using Placidus, where is 11 degrees Aries in your chart so that you can see like this new revelation of the leading edge version of yourself in the world. What house is that taking place in? And that maybe helps to like ground it a little bit more, get a little bit more clarity on the vision that you're having, and like to help you believe in the rightness of the vision that you're having. So yeah. Oh, I love this so much. And then I don't even drink it. Okay. So the moon is the ruler of the fourth house and Cancer. All of those things are, oh no, you're good. Spamming is fine. No problem with the spamming. The only downside of spamming is that then it's too much for me to sit here and like read on stream. So yeah, that's the only downside. But I do read them later. So let's see. The moon. We talked about this when we did the full moon in Virgo. And so some of these are a little bit of a repeat. But some key words on the moon. A lot of times you'll hear it described as your emotions or your feelings, which is accurate. I would also add it's our intuition, our senses, instincts, and sensitivities. In the Book of Water, Stephen Forrest says your moon sign is like your mood averaged over a lifetime. Your mood averaged over a lifetime. It's also like your dominant attitude, like day to day. If you were to smooth out the ups and the downs kind of thing, like what are you left with? Also, very similar to the way that we talked about Mercury is a filter. So let's say like emotions are like the perfect mirror, the exact reflection. And then each of us has our moon in a different sign, in a different house, making a different aspects. And that's where you see the filter come in of like, how do emotions work inside of you? So this is where like talking to somebody else about their emotions, or like how, how people deal with death is one, or, just sad things in general. We all have a different way of handling the emotions that go on inside of us. And we all express differently, they're felt differently, the intensity levels vary. The reason for that, as far as your natal chart is concerned, is the moon sign. The moon is in a particular sign, in a particular house, making a set of aspects. And then the transits are lighting up your moon. Or if you have like one of my clients, her Capricorn moon is at like 27 degrees of Capricorn. So like right at the US Pluto return point, where Pluto has just been like sitting on top of her moon for like a couple years now. So yeah, like we each have our own experience with emotions. Like no two people feel the same way. And so again, this goes a long ways in terms of accepting your own emotional style, whatever that looks like, however hot or cold you run. Like again, like there's a lot of moon signs that can get like a lot of hate out there. Like Aquarius moon is one that I've noticed where like they get told like you're too cold, you're too detached, you're too blah 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 blah. And it's like, lay off them. Like they're wired that way. That's just how they are. Like it's always perfect. Like your moon sign, your Mercury sign, everything in your chart is always perfect. So for that person, for that Aquarius moon person, for example, they need a detached relationship with their emotions. At least in that regard, they need that to be there. And that mechanism allows them to be the big picture person that they are, the humanitarian, the one who's in it for what's best for humanity. Them being detached from their own personal values and emotional needs lets them be of greater service to humanity, like lets them prioritize what's best for the all instead of what's best for me. So for whatever reason, they needed that on their mission. They needed that emotional distance. So talking someone into feeling differently, like that's just not a good idea. It's not nice. Ooh, that's a word I don't know. I can't even read it. I don't even know how to say that. Diumal. That new moon shows up in my diumal chart for that day, and it's almost exact. I don't know what that is, Shay, if you want to tell me what that chart is all about. This is my favorite analogy that I think I've ever come up with as far as astrology goes. But it's about how the sun, moon, and rising sign all work together. Like they are the big three and are basically the three pillars of your personality. With those three things, we get like 85% of the way there to who you are. And then the rest of the planets, the rest of the chart fill in that last 15%. So no two people are exactly alike, even if you find somebody who has the same big three as you. But how those three each play their part because they each do different things. So a car, your car, for example, um, the car itself is the rising sign. That's the vehicle. That's the energy that you get into when you want to go out into the world and do stuff, meet people, go places. Like that's your energy that you use to connect with the world. The rising sign is the car. The driver of the car is your sun sign. So whatever sign, house, aspects, all of that, that's who's driving the car. That's the car itself doesn't care if you go to Farm and Home or Starbucks. Like the car doesn't give a shit where it goes. It can go anywhere. It's unlimited. That's the whole point of the car. And so the rising sign just tells us that's how you meet the world, where you're actually going to go and where you're actually going to point yourself in the world. That's your sun sign. That's your like core of your personality. The center of your internal universe is that sun sign. That's your deepest wants and desires for the light that you want to shine in this world. So what's important to you? The driver of the car is who decides, I'm going to go volunteer at the Humane Society. I'm going to go, see my grandma. Like the driver of the car is who decides. So that's your sun sign. And then the gas tank in the car, that's your moon sign. So like, let's say that you don't do any self-care. You take care of everyone else and you totally neglect yourself. Eventually, your gas tank is empty And now your car won't go anywhere. The driver wants to go. The car would otherwise be able to go, but the gas tank is completely empty and it won't go. The driver is stranded, the car is stranded, all because of that goddamn gas tank. And how many times, how many times have you lived through that? Because me, a lot. I've actually run out of gas a couple of times, 3 to be exact. And metaphorically, I feel like I've run out of gas more times than I can count. My burnout cycle, overworking, burning out, overworking, burning out, overworking, burning out. Like that was me for, I don't know, a couple decades. And no more, because I understand, like, every day I put gas in my tank. Every day I take care of my moon sign. And that's just one piece of my daily self-care, is thinking about, like, what does my moon want? And there are other pieces, I think, that contribute to a good daily self-care routine, but that's why self-care routines are as unique as individuals, because our moon signs are 100% unique between the sign, the house, and the aspects. And so depending on what your emotional needs are, that governs a lot of, like, what does your daily self-care practice need to look like? As in daily chart. Okay, see, I've never even heard of that. Is opposite of nocturnal. Yeah, I'm gonna have to Google. That's so crazy. Thank you for telling me. Jokesies. Let's see. So, yeah, the emotional needs, the sensitivities, the comfort zone of yourself, your inner self. Where do you feel at home? Where do you feel safe and secure? Where do you feel like the energy just flows easily and you can totally relax? Like your whole body just relaxes when you go to this place. Maybe it's an outer place, maybe it's an inner place. It could be either one. Um, let's see, I already covered that. Moon is also called Mother Moon because the moon is the feminine face of God. And that being said, the sun is the masculine face of God. So, like, the sun rules over the day, the moon rules over the night. I like how, like, the night and the darkness is feminine. Like, that's like the emotional territory, darkness in general. Like, so often, like, we're so hyper vigilant and, like, focused on the light, on the day, on the masculine, go get it, go get it, go get it. But, like, really, like, you can't have one without the other. And this, like, the spring equinox is a perfect example. Like, we just passed that here a few days ago, where the the light, it was like, it's just as much light on the planet as darkness, meaning, like, the day was just as long as the night. So the light and the dark were completely balanced. The feminine and the masculine were completely balanced. Um, and that's really, like, I feel like masculine, feminine, like, just keeps coming up, or maybe I don't know. It's in my unfolding at this moment. And so feminine face of God, like, that's why it represents your mothering instincts. So, like, even men have moons because we all eventually mother ourselves and other people, basically, by extension. And in the Book of Water, Stephen Forrest gives this story around, like, how caring or uncaring you are towards yourself will be reflected in how caring or uncaring you are towards others. And he gives this example, like, you wake up with a sore throat, and if you're really caring towards yourself, you take your temperature, you see that you have, like, a 99.9-degree temperature, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to stay home from work today and rest because I don't feel good. So you call your boss, tell them that, and then, tomorrow you feel better and you go back to work. And if you're not caring towards yourself, you wake up, sore throat, don't feel good, and you say, well, work's got to happen. The world doesn't stop just because I don't feel good. Like, get your ass out of bed, get going. And then you go to work, 3 days later, you're sicker than ever, and 5 of your coworkers have caught what you have, and now they're homesick. And now they're personally suffering at homesick, and the work is suffering because all these people are out. So, like, you being uncaring to yourself is as good as being uncaring to every other person on the planet. So nurturing our moon, nurturing ourselves, like being soft and kind and gentle and honoring whatever emotional state we find ourselves in. Sometimes that's easier than others. And last but not least, the moon is the great healer. So responsible for recovery, gentle caring, and creating the feeling of glad to be alive. Like how we overcome hard things to come back to a place of being grateful for our life. And that is because you can't heal what you can't feel. And our moon represents how we receive that emotional energy, that feeling data. And so, like the water family, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, they're all three responsible for steps in that healing and recovery and regeneration process. But the first step is Cancer, ruled by the moon. The first step of healing is feeling. So that's why the moon is called the great healer. So, yeah, if you're in a place where, you want to look at your self-care routine and see if you could optimize it a little bit more, like look to your moon sign. If you're in a place where you feel like you're crashing and like you can't keep going the way that you've been going, and maybe you need to start a self-care practice, your moon sign, great place to go. So the new moon, this is also from the Book of Water a little bit and some other stuff. I'll try my best to tell the sources as I go. But first from the Book of Water, he goes through the different moon phases in there. And the new moon, he calls the teacher and says that it is the bringer of gifts to the community. And I think he's mostly talking about, well, I take that back. I know he's talking about if you were born under this moon cycle, like if you were born during the full moon, new moon, meaning in your birth chart, the moon and the sun are in the same sign, that you are a teacher / bringer of gifts to the community. But I think every single new moon that we go through, every time we have a new idea or a new intention or a new something that we want to create out into the world, technically, I think you could say that that is bringing gifts to the community, because the only way anything ever comes into the physical is by being born through a person who cares enough to create it. So, some keywords with new moons: new beginnings, planting seeds, setting intentions, initiations, activations, and launches. So again, I say, which house is 11 degrees Aries for you? This new moon will be taking place March 31st to April 1st in that overnight time. So depending on your time zone will be the date for you. And then this new moon is also part of a little train of planets where Chiron is at the front at 12 degrees, and Mercury will be up to 9 degrees by that point. And then again, you have the sun and moon at 11. So all very tightly conjunct. And that is, for that one, I recommend on the March 25th playlist, there's one by Molly McCord for the Aries New Moon. And she does a really nice job of like talking about how basically Chiron has already been through this territory, and the last time it was at this particular point was last June and July, so like last summer 2021. And that since that time we have healed a big chunk of ourself, of our perception of ourself, like Chiron and Aries. And that now this new moon is opening us up to, now that we've healed whatever this piece was, we now can stand on that healing as new solid ground and move forward in the world in a new way. And that this new moon right there next to Chiron, right there with Mercury, it's like we are a visual in our minds big time for like, who is this leading edge next level version of who you are, and how can you get clear on that? And then remember, like the rest of it will become history as the rest of the year unfolds. Even just having a vision is so powerful at this time. So when the moon is in Aries, and again, this will mostly resonate if you were born with the moon in Aries, but all of us have 2.5 days every single month of the moon moving through Aries. So the evolutionary goal is to have the courage to face your fears. That's like the main life lesson if you were born with an Aries moon is fear can't slow you down. You got to keep going. And this new moon in Aries, like it has a dose of that, a big one. And so again, letting the vision be there and letting yourself be afraid, letting yourself be nervous, letting yourself not know how you're going to get there and still intending to get there. Like that's the kind of stubborn, single-minded focus that Aries delivers on. The tools of Moon in Aries is knowing how to survive and do battle if you have to. Like if it really comes down to it, I mean, like it says for Moon in Aries, when you listen to the longer version, it's like these people will have things in their lives that they would willingly lay down their life for because that's how much those things matter. And typically in that pile, you're going to put your kids, you know, that kind of thing. But like they have things that like this is I'm devoting my life to being this person in the world because of your picture of what I care about. That like, you know, my dad comes to mind and I've told lots of stories about my dad, lots of different facets, but this is one that has been really helpful thanks to astrology, thanks to, you know, getting to see that he does have an Aries moon and he worked in a way where my mom got to stay home with the four of us after Sam was born. So I was like 4 or 5 when my mom started staying home. But um, so she stayed home and dad worked. And to do that, he took jobs that he would leave and go to work for like 3 or 4 months at a time. He would like go halfway across the country or to a different country and do his thing and be gone for a few months up to 7, 8, 9 months just because he's working every single day so that that's how long it takes. And then he can come home. Granted, he would come home and be there for just a few days and then go again. And that created this dynamic where I just really didn't get that. I really did not understand. Like, why does he not want to be here with his family? Like, doesn't he care about us? You know, and that bred a lot of anger over the years on my part. And now, like in this moment more than ever, I can see that the only reason he had that kind of work ethic was because he was feeding us 5. Like he was feeding me and my brothers and my mom. Like he was putting money in the bank so that there would be college money. He was like making sure that we had a life, that we were well taken care of. I didn't want anything. Like we weren't rich by any means, but like we also weren't poor. And that was because he worked 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, months and months on the road at a time. And I think he did that because of the bigger picture. In his mind, it was honorable to him to spend his life like this because of the benefits that it created, even though he had to sacrifice this over here. So that visual, I like that. I'm going to think about that some more later. That was really nice. To create happiness with Moon and Aries, you need to feel the dignity of living in an honorable way. And what does that even mean, an honorable way? It's completely individual. It's completely up to you. Like, what is your definition of honor? What's your heart being called to do? And yeah, that's a very personal path. Some potential downsides, some shadow sides of Moon and Aries, is that it really does create a sense of urgency. And that this is one of the reasons that I pulled out the main point that I did of like letting the vision be there without feeling like, now what do I do? Like, how do I jump from here to like doing everything that I'm seeing in my vision? Like, how do I do that? And the Aries energy creates that sense of urgency because, again, these are not just your little dreams. These are source energy dreaming a dream through your vessel. So this sense of urgency is literally the universe itself wanting that shit to exist. So yeah, we're not going to get rid of the sense of urgency. That's the universal forces moving through us. But it can also like another downside of this Aries is the drive to win can cause you to make sacrifices that get you off the path of like, really, what are you trying to do here? Because like basically what it cautions is like Moon in Aries, you can basically win an argument even if you're wrong. Like you can fight to the death and you can win even if you're wrong. So just because there is a lot of fight doesn't mean you have to fight. And that's a balance for Aries energy in general, is like learning how to be that self-aware, like self-directed, self-propelled, like I'm doing what I want to do, and communicating your boundaries with people along the way, and then just like steamrolling and like leaving a path of destruction behind you. Like there's a difference, and I think there's a graceful way to kind of find a middle ground there. So it wraps up by saying, be careful of any rage or like venting your rage on other people, any bursts of anger that could land on somebody that you didn't really mean for that to happen. It just kind of popped out. This is a time where, like, anytime the moon moves through Aries, like our fire just comes a little bit closer to the surface, where it's just a little harder to keep a lid on. So this new moon in Aries, to kind of wrap up with like tying it all together, then this is a time of like seeing yourself in this solo journey, this pioneer, like hero's journey is what somebody else, I heard them call it. I don't think they were talking about Aries, but it happened this week and it felt very resonant with like this living in an honorable way, your hero's journey. Like, what is that? Like, how do you personally define it? And this new moon is a time of like, you know, getting to turn the page and see like what even is going to happen next. Like I'm calling it a preview, because you really aren't there yet. Like you're not just going to wake up tomorrow and like be a different person. Like, but of, if you point yourself in this direction, 5 years, 10 years from now, like, yeah, I could totally be that person if I just keep moving in that direction. So it's about having the vision and who do you want to be, and believing in that for yourself, because the universe can't like deliver it in your experience if you don't even think it's possible. So the first step to manifestation is belief. And once you believe, the universe has done all the rest of it for you. So that is, again, hopefully, at least the crowd of people that would be listening to this, like hopefully there is a way to like reach for that faith and that trust that says, whatever I'm seeing in my wildest dreams of who I could be in this world, like I believe if I can see it, it's possible. And I believe that I will figure it out along the way. Like that would be such a productive takeaway for me and anybody else that can hang on to that. Clear revolutions around our freedom and independence. So that kind of goes back to that, like, when you have this rush of Aries energy and you like kind of, you get bigger in this Aries energy, your sense of self just kind of blossoms. Sitting in the little cramped, tiny boxes that you've been trying to fit into before, like they get very uncomfortable. So that's where, again, though, I say like kind of be careful in this Aries energy of like, you don't have to blow up the boxes just because I don't want to sit in there all the time anymore. Like there's ways to decide and own it for yourself without necessarily even ever needing to declare anything to anybody else, or to like, blow up the boxes or relationships, burn bridges, all that. Like you don't really have to. You can if that's what needs to happen, but most of the time, like just you knowing it is going to create the change itself. So an intentional preview of who you are ready to be. And then in April, with the April 12th Neptune-Jupiter conjunction, we have a huge release culminating through that Pisces energy of like letting go, transcendence, releasing, merging with the divine. That is all coming to this beautiful height, April 12th. And all of that release all of that transcendence and letting go is just opening up all of this huge space inside of your grid, inside of your life, like the cup with the water. Like right now, it's pretty close to full. April 12th, it's like pouring out like a big bunch of it. So now your cup is pretty empty and there's room for all of this new stuff to come in. So that's April 12th plus the conjunction, because they're slower moving planets. It's like 10 days that they're going to be like conjunct, basically. And then May 10th is when Jupiter is going to move on into Aries. So right now, April 1st, Aries New Moon, we're going to get this visual. April 12th, we're clearing a big bunch of stuff that's in our way. And then like those next few weeks, like we're bringing in the new, we're getting our fires stoked and going forward on what exactly is it that you are wanting to create. And this is a really nice time to kind of get familiar, get aware. Like Mercury, moving into Aries on March 27th, our awareness is helpful as we go into this big release in April with Neptune, Jupiter. It's like, I have this feeling of here to release the old when you have a clear picture of what it's all for. What is the point? Where am I going? What's the goal? What's the vision? Because letting go of something that's not good for you or not serving you can be really difficult. It can feel like, I don't want to give that up, whatever. And if that's how you feel, like chances are this over here, what do you actually want? What do you really want to create? What's really important to you? It's just not loud enough yet. And through this Aries season, all the personal planets moving through, like it is going to get louder. So you can definitely trust that. But yeah, using that preview to empower an even deeper release. Because again, the more you can release, the more space you can clear in your grid, the bigger the new thing that can come in, that the more you have room for something new to come into your life, something that you're actually. So this is basically a burst of courageous, self-loving energy that wants your dreams to become a reality, that knows they need to exist. You would not be having these dreams if they did not need to exist. So there is a part of you that knows that. You're the part of you that is connected with your higher self, back to source energy itself, knows for certain that your dreams matter. And the rest of you knowing that, that can be a process of untangling conditioning and other things that have taught you that, maybe your dreams don't matter, because they absolutely do, but it can be really normal, unfortunately, to grow up and learn that my dreams actually don't matter. So, sometimes that's having to unlearn that is one of the steps along the way. And okay, so this was, I think, out of Pam Gregory's new moon video, where she tied it back to this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that happens once every 166 years in Pisces, happens every 13 years, but only 166 years in Pisces. And so this new moon initiation is in service to a wider spiritual awakening and elevation of consciousness, and is part of us moving to our next spiritual level. So like this vision, this dream that we're receiving with this Aries new moon, with this Aries energy in general, this courage to face our fears, this courage to put ourselves out there and pursue what we're passionate about, that all of the things that we're pursuing are actually what's laying the groundwork for humanity as a whole, leveling up its consciousness and moving to the next level of our spiritual evolution. So again, these are not just like your little dreams. These are the universe's intentions manifesting through each of us individually. Yeah, it's big stuff. Big stuff. Let's see. Is that on there? I don't think it's on there. I don't trust it for 1 minute. Just take it off. Let me look through here. Ooh. Then I have to like care and put energy in acting, and I'm so busy watching Will and Grace. I hear you. I had, yeah. um, okay, so I'm from Kansas. She's commenting on how I say the word forward. Forward? Is that like forward? 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 I think I do say forward. I don't know why. I don't know why. But somebody told me recently. So okay. All right. So closing points. I have a few thoughts. The main one is the self-trust of like, even if you have no idea how you're ever going to do your big vision, to let it be there, to just let it happen and trust that like when Jupiter moves into Aries, for example, that a big rush of energy, that's May 10th. Like sometimes I even mark my calendar for these kinds of things. So May 10th, Jupiter moves into Aries, and that is where a huge burst of this fiery action, charging out into the world, asserting who we are. There is a big burst of that energy coming in May. We just aren't there yet. And that's okay because we still have this other work to do. But honestly, I think we're being given this preview right now while we're still doing this work to help us get through the work that we still have to do. Um, like the Pisces release, like unbound water, all that Neptune Jupiter conjunction of release and letting go. Like when we say release, usually I mean crying. I mean tears. I mean, you're going to have to release it. Like it's going to have to be transmuted. That energy's got to go somewhere. So tears. And yeah, like that's maybe not the funnest thing in the world to like have a big release. I don't know. I kind of like it, but then again, my Mars is in Pisces, so I like a big purge. I like to empty myself out, and that's like energetically, metaphorically speaking. Um, but that is maybe not the most fun thing. But having this vision of what is it all for? You're clearing away the old, you're facing the shadow, you're healing the wounds, you're transcending and forgiving and accepting things that you haven't accepted before. And what is it all for? It's for something really important. It's for you to be able to move towards your dreams. Every ounce of release is only creating more ability, more open path towards your dreams. So I think the preview just helps us to kind of stay grounded in, why am I going through all of this, like, overwhelming dreaming and big release? Well, it's setting us up for some big motion forward, big motion forward. And so I love this part too. Like when we think about how Jupiter is going to transit through Aries, it's going to move into Aries from May 10th through July 29th. And then it turns retrograde. So it only makes it up to like 8 degrees of Aries. And then it'll turn retrograde. And July 29th through October 29th, it'll retrograde back across the first little bit of Aries. And it gets back into Pisces October 29th through December 21st. So I think that's really interesting because this burst of fiery energy and like, wow, here I am, that Jupiter in Aries is going to be, we get a couple months of that, 2.5 months of that. And then we pause and we retrace what we've done so far. We dip back into Pisces. We reconnect with the all. We reconnect with our compassion. We reconnect with divinity that's flowing through all of us. And we reground our big dreams and our vision of who we want to be in the world. We reground it again back into Pisces, where it is so much in service to the collective, to the highest good of the all. You being who you were born to be is in the highest good of the all. That's just how it works. And when we get into Aries, and especially Jupiter in Aries, like it's a big fireball of like so much energy, so much action, so much momentum, so much motion forward that like, it's easy to get going so fast and kind of topple over off your own momentum. So that retrograde that happens after a couple of months, it's like, okay, and now we pause and we come back and we check back in and go back to the love phase. And like, are we really in alignment with that? And maybe get a couple things worked out again. And then we go back to Aries and we complete the full transit. So I think that that's really intentional. I think it's intentional that we get the vision so early on, even though it's not time to take action on it. I think it's intentional that after this Pisces release, Jupiter is moving straight on into Aries, where we are ready to rock and roll at that point. Like May gets here, it's on. This is your moment. I wrote it big on the page. The universe is matching 1,000,000% your belief in yourself. So, like, again, if, yeah, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but incremental is the only way to like actually change anything in our lives. I loved that that came up at our Patreon event this past Tuesday. Um, Feel free to check that out. If you're subscribed, the recording from that event is over there. And if you haven't subscribed yet, it unlocks all the recordings for all the things that we've done for the Patreon community. But incremental is the only way to evolve. So this is a time where believing in yourself, it's such an incremental process that it can feel like you're standing still, even though you may be moving forward like 1 millimeter at a time. And with that, I'll point you towards the deservability treatment video that I released here not too long ago, where this was a piece of how I came to believe that I deserved to do what works for me. Like I deserve to follow my own sense of who do I want to be in this world. Like I deserve that. And the deservability treatment is a huge piece of how I came to know that and internalize that within myself. So that might be another good starting point if you feel like you're more early in the Aries path of self-discovery and knowing the fight that sets your soul on fire. Yes, there's Maddie putting the Patreon and the deservability treatment in there. So yeah, like incremental is the only way. These dreams are the universe's dreams, so they will unfold in divine timing no matter what. So that's the part where, yes, your action is required. Like you're here in the physical, your action is required to manifest things in the physical, but it also has to happen on divine timing because the cooperative components, all the other people who are going to be involved, they matter too. You know, like they're working their way towards you just like you're working your way towards them. So that's where, okay, so for example, this is like just to kind of give a practical look. So on the Virgo full moon, so a couple of days before the spring equinox, I had a vision of I want to, sorry, I keep hitting my thing. I want to do, or I am doing, this course on opening a spiritual business. And I don't think I had said what the course was going to be yet, but I did a podcast episode here not too long ago on opening a spiritual business. And it was like maybe 40 minutes long and really got me stirred up on how much I love talking about it, for one, and how many pieces there really are. Like, in those 40 minutes, I covered maybe like 3 or 4 different pieces that I wanted to talk about. And I'm like, after I got done making that episode, I had so many more pieces that I'm like, if I really was going to teach somebody how to be successful at trying to open their business, like it would be this and this and this and this. I would have so much more to say. And that realization was already there. And then the Virgo full moon comes. And if you watch back to that video, I had predicted that this is going to be like a revelation of clarity around how can you be of service from where you stand right now today with everything that you've learned already, not what you still need to learn or what degree you need to get or any of that kind of stuff, but like a revelation of how to be of service right now. And on that evening of the full moon, I just sat there for like 3 hours and brainstormed this whole course of opening a spiritual business. And really, I would say it probably would be helpful whether it's a spiritual business or you're just wanting to be self-employed, period. Like one of the girls or people in our Patreon community is a photographer. And I think it's like basically the same set of steps that I would give to somebody doing a non-spiritual business as the spiritual one, but it's definitely a spiritual take on how to open a business. It's not probably what you would expect as far as like, you know, there is one session on LLCs and bank accounts and all of that, but that's about it. And the other 7 sessions are more the shadow work pieces of why entrepreneurship is hard, why it's challenging, and how to be prepared for what it will ask of you. And what it will ask of you is a shit ton of self-trust. And this season, this Aries new moon, followed by all the personal planets moving through Aries, followed by Jupiter coming into Aries in May, all of this is expanding our self-trust. And the more we trust ourselves, the more likely we are to go out into the world and create who we actually want to be, who we feel called to be. And that is like why I feel so passionate about this course. But right now, my plate is like full. So the course is not a thing that I have capacity for right now. So I scheduled it in like loosely, whatever, in July. So that's when it's going to start. And lately, like since that happened a week ago, basically, um, I have been feeling the divine timing of it not starting until July, about how like it's not just me offering this course in a vacuum, like it's me meeting on a weekly basis with this group of people. And this group of people isn't going to just like materialize out of thin air. They're all walking their own path to come to this space where each of them individually will show up in this space with me. And so we will all be there together. And the divine timing of it, it's like, yeah, my capacity isn't there right now to host this, to do this. I have these things that I'm committed to and have to see through to the end. And then I'll have time for it. And so having this big vision and this big goal and feeling so good about it and so excited for it, and it doesn't start for 3.5 months. So it's like that. It's like, let it just be okay that it's not right now and that it is still exciting to know what's coming in the future. You know, that's still more than we had. And it's okay that it's going to unfold in divine timing, and that you can even energetically feel your way into like what I've been doing. It's like I can feel the people in this group. I can already feel them. I already feel like I'm connected with them, because where they are right now, the reason that they need until July is because this Aries energy, this Pisces energy, this Aquarius energy, all these big dreams, they're coming online, right? Like they have to have the dream, and then they have to work through the beginning of believing that they can have it, that they want it, that it's worth fighting for, that it's worth going after. And that by the time we get to July, they will have enough momentum. They will be ready to step into a course that actually walks them through that process step by step. So divine timing takes so much into account that, like, I mean, really, we shouldn't ever be like trying to dictate when things unfold. That's just a recipe for disappointment. Um, but it's fun to think about the cooperative components that are getting ready to be ready for that fateful event, just like you are. You know, like you're in it together right now, even though you have no idea who they are. Mm, yes. Well, and that's like, so you're already doing a part of it here online, helping others with your astrology knowledge and all. So that's again where I go back to, I think it's very intentional that we are being given this preview right now. Because even though I can't host the course right now, I still know that that's where I'm headed. And that perspective has greatly influenced me so far, like in how I present this today, like all of this Aries and new moon and Mercury and all of that, like so much of that was wrapped up in this energetic connection that I can feel to this group of people who will join me in July. And this is where they are. They have a dream and they're overwhelmed. They're like, how the fuck am I going to do this? I don't know what to do. And I just want to just hug them energetically and metaphorically, because I don't like physical hugs, but like just hug them energetically and be like, you will absolutely figure it out. And it is absolutely worth fighting for. And I can say these things and I can lay these messages out to hopefully, provide touch points of sinking a little bit deeper into that yourself. But ultimately, each person has to know it for themselves to be able to chase their dream. You have to know that your dream is valuable. And I do see, like, I'm so glad that I know that that's going to happen in July, because I do feel like I'm able to use that vision to make the most of the opportunities that I have right now. No, it's not the full blown course, but I do have this moment to talk to, put my voice out there, put my message out there. What am I going to say? It's being influenced by this vision of who I am becoming in the future, even though that's not where I am right now. So that's the incremental part of it, I think, is that we tune into it one step at a time. And that's where we are at the beginning here in Aries season, is like just beginning to even see what direction do we want to go, let alone how are we going to get there. That's a whole nother piece of it that it will all unfold in time. Let it all unfold in divine timing, in service to the highest good. That is the end of my notes. Close the book on that. And now I'm going to look at the chat. Okay, let's see, what do we got? What happened to my hand? Not carpal tunnel. It's really interesting, this injury that I have. And I don't probably looks like the screen got frozen. It wasn't. I was frozen. I don't like to talk about it because I don't want it to hurt more. But even in that, I'm sensing a fear that I'm like, resistance. I should be with that. But anyways, so what happened? I was doing a project at my grocery store that was like maybe the most fun I'd ever had at my grocery store. Like, it rivaled even the opening part, which was the funnest, like designing the grocery store, doing the construction remodel project, like all of that was by far way more fun than actually running the grocery store. That's a whole other thing. But like 2 years after we opened, I was doing a project where, long story short, I was taking the top shelf off of the whole store. So like, basically, we had a lot of gaps on our shelves that, like, those products, either they didn't sell, so we were discontinuing them, or like they no longer sold them from our warehouse, so you couldn't order it anymore. Anyways, you wind up with gaps on your shelf, and there were so many gaps. And filling the gaps, you would think it's not that hard, but it's expensive to order new items. It adds up very quickly, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, to fix all these gaps, we're taking the top shelf off the whole store, and that's going to like shrink the product set down so that it like doesn't have as much space to fill up. And to do that, I had to like take the shelves off, and like you just like lift them up and like pull them out of there, and you can move them wherever you. And I did this to the whole store over the course of like, took me like 6 months to do that. And one of the shelves, I was in a pissy mood. I was at the end of my rope. And basically, this is like Carly versus Shelf, and Shelf won kind of thing. Is like, I was in a rush. I was like, gotta get done, gotta get finished. And I go to take the thing out. I was like hurrying. And so I like really gave it all my force, and the freaking shelf didn't go anywhere. And something here popped. And that was like 2 years ago that it happened. And it was fine for like 2 years. And then a few months ago, it just like started hurting. And so, long story short, I think it's energetic. It's symbolic of a release of sorts that I'm doing. I think the fact that it didn't bother me for 2 years, and now it's like very tender and sore. And also, like, I just don't get sick or like have injuries usually. So like, it's very odd that I would have this, but like, even just having it, it has forced me to slow down and be more mindful and be nicer and gentler with myself. Like, the fact that I even was wrestling with the shelf and like aggressively out of there, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? Why not just like take your time? And it was a fun project anyway, so why was I rushing to get it done? Like, there's just, that's a whole thing that I've spent some time yeah, trying to understand, like, what is this supposed to be teaching me? But while it's here, it's teaching me to slow down and be kinder and gentler to myself. And that's a lesson worth learning because yeah, I can be um, like I'm really good at meeting my goals, but I'm really good at meeting my goals because I'm good at forcing myself to do what I need to do. And that's fine until you're running yourself into the ground, like with an empty gas tank, and now you're stranded in the middle of nowhere. So I feel like this is like a healing and a releasing on an even deeper level of I'm not going to force myself to do anything. I'm going to go with my own flow at my own pace, in my own time. There's no rush, there's no hurry to do anything. Like I think it was a big healing on a big level as far as yeah. So, um thank you for asking. Let's see. Oh, Tony, you have no idea. So I'm seeing your comment now, but I think maybe you're talking about my course. I don't know. But I'm really excited about that too. I'm so freaking pumped about that, and it doesn't start till July, and I haven't, like, scheduled any of it, I haven't built any of it, which is also kinda new territory for me as far as, um like, I was thinking about that, like, in previous things that I've done, it's like I'll get the idea, I'll build the website part, I'll write the copy, I'll schedule the things, I'll put it like, it that'll all happen in, like, one day, and basically none of that has ever, like, really been like long term. I mean, I'm a 6'3" in human design. I'm not supposed to live a long term life anyway, as far as like doing the same thing for a long time. But it's like this feels really good as far as let me have the idea and let me sit with it. Let me be entertained with it for a while. And then, it'll unfold in the physical in the divine timing when it's supposed to. But just because I know what I want to do doesn't mean that I have to hurry up and get it all done because that is definitely a side of myself that I am healing on a deeper and deeper level day by day by day. Is like letting myself be wherever I am. Like a couple of days ago, I had um it was Wednesday. Oh yes, it was the day after our Sacred Circle on Tuesday, the Patreon event. And I also, yeah, started my period that day. So I was like very, very tired and did not feel good and everything else. And so I was like in the bed like all day on Wednesday. And I kept having these ideas of things that I want to make a video about that. And I want to study this. And I want to read about this. And I want to do this with the course. And I want to do this with the grocery trading. And it was like all these ideas. And I kept like, oh, but I don't feel good. And then I would be like, because I don't feel good. Like I was being pissy is what I was doing. And finally, it kind of broke free a little bit in that I realized like these, because I was getting pissy, like, why do I keep having these fun ideas if I don't have any energy to act on them? Like, this sucks. This like, pity party. And I just like eventually realized, like, wow, like, how about I just say, if the idea, which is something that I already understand, but I feel like it sunk in a little bit deeper at that moment, like, if the idea is actually meant to happen, it'll bring with it the the what and the who and the where and the when and the energy to get it all done. And if you're having an idea and none of this other stuff, then this idea is here to entertain you in this moment. And that's okay. That's enough. The fact that you're receiving benefit and value and entertainment from this idea, even though, that would make a great video and I'm sure a lot of people would really enjoy it. And like, yeah, that is valuable. You're right. But it's okay that you don't have the energy to do all the things all the time. So I just kind of like made that deal with myself. I'm like, any of these ideas that are coming today while I'm so low energy, don't feel good, like basically horizontal all day, like any of these energies that are here today, they'll come back. If they actually want to exist, they'll come back and they'll bring the energy that I need to make them with them when they come back, if they really truly want to exist. And otherwise, if it's just, this, I am laying in bed, I am kind of bored. So, like, here's these ideas that are like floating into my mind that, like, yeah, that is entertaining. It is fun to think about. these interesting new things that I learned about, or my course that I'm so excited to put together, or, that is fun, but that doesn't mean that I have to translate it into something right freaking now. Like that, that is just, you would think that that's such a simple concept, and it's taking me almost 34 years to really get that. I'll be 34 soon. That's kind of crazy. Time, it just like has lost all meaning at this point, I swear. I'm pretty much done here. I just am like hanging out with you guys in the chat. Yeah. Tony, are you talking about which is why it has shown itself to push? I don't know which one you're speaking of, whether it's my wrist or my period cramps, because I think they kind of pushed me to a growth edge Wednesday. Pain of any kind, injury of any kind, slowdown of any kind, delay of any kind. Like, yeah, there's something in there that is ready to be healed. Like, it's like this, my wrist thing has woken me up to how unconscious I was before of my body. Like, I was not paying any attention to it at all. And I know that because when my wrist started acting up, I heard it all day, every day, and I couldn't freaking stop. And that's why I finally put a brace on it, so that I would at least, it would be a reminder to me to like stop using your freaking hand like it's fine. Like, it can't lift anything, it can't put the seatbelt on, it just stop it. Stop trying to use it like it's fine. And it really clued me into like how unconscious I really am. Like, because even now I'll get in the car and I'll go like this, and I'm like, oh, wait, no. Okay. And before, I would just grab a hold of it and have it all the way down here, and then realize like, ow, oh my gosh, ow. So I would already have it completely hurt and re-aggravated before I even was aware that I was using it. And so I was like, holy shit, like I'm freaking on autopilot like all the time. And that was kind of a wake-up call, because that's not my intention. That's definitely not my intention. So yeah, it's been very helpful to become more aware of how present and aware am I in each moment. And yeah, so. I have noticed though that like now that it's injured, like rotating it this way is not good. So it also, to your point, Shay, I type on my laptop sometimes. I mostly journal, like handwriting. So I'm right-handed. So like it's not slowing me down there. But like when I'm on my computer, and if I don't have my brace on, especially, like it's only like 15, 20 minutes before I can't type anymore. And that seems really interesting as far as like pushing me off my technology. Um, like I can't, it hurts. And so you have to stop. And, like that's interesting as far as the timing goes, because I'll have to back off, and that points you in a different direction. And then when I get on my computer, I know I'm not trying to be on here all day. I'm trying to like get in and get out in at most like 30 minutes or an hour spend on the computer. And then I need to be done for a while and like go stretch out my wrist and like really rotate it this way seems to really help. So yeah, it's affecting my whole life to like have this, I don't know if it's like a sprain or what, that it would be dormant for 2 years and then come out of nowhere and like everything hurts it. Why has this happened? It's the right time, I guess. Yes. I would have guessed you to be younger than 34. Thank you. I think, right? Is that appropriate? Yeah. I think I'm pretty young at heart. I feel like I'm Benjamin Button. Okay. So I feel like I'm Benjamin Button, like aging in reverse. When I was a child, I was a very serious child. I was a very responsible child. I was the oldest. I had 3 younger brothers, yada, yada, yada. And so I didn't really have a childhood like where I played and did fun things and was creative and did art. And like, I mean, that just wasn't what my childhood was like. And now, now that's what it's like. I feel like I'm having my childhood now. And I've been working since I was like 5. And yeah, so I mean, basically I retired like last summer, we'll say ish. Like I've only done consulting projects since July of last year. So like that's totally working on my own time, not on anybody else's schedule, which I would consider to be basically retired. And that was like, if you factor it in from like age 5, which was when I started doing laundry and dishes and all that kind of stuff, like, yeah, 5 to 33, that's a good long chunk of work. And now I'm resting. I'm in my rest mode now. I'm in my allowing myself to have fun mode and allowing myself to do what feels right to me, even if other people don't understand it, which is exactly what kids are so freaking good at. So yeah, I think young at heart hopefully will keep me looking young my whole life. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Is 30s the new 20s? Because 20s aren't as great as I was expecting. I always loved a 30s, 40s, city, fabulous Manhattan lifestyle. Um, yeah. So you watch Sex and the City and Will and Grace, Sarah Jessica Parker. Yeah, we have very similar taste, it sounds like. Um, of being stranded after not taking your movie. Get it. Dude, that's exactly what I do. They say you could just point to everything, like in Sabrina, the Teenage Witch. That's basically that's how I well, and like I have a Pisces Mars and a Pisces North node, and so that is a lot how I think about my life. It's like I'm not creating anything through my action. I'm creating everything through my energy. So it really is a matter of pointing at what you want and like write down what you want and like the universe delivers it to you. I don't know. That's my experience. Yeah. Okay. You guys, this has been so fun. And I'm so glad I trimmed down my notes just a little bit. So I had a little bit more time to play in the chat. And yeah, this was so good. If you haven't already, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. And I will see you next Friday and every Friday morning for that matter for one of these super fun live streams. Yeah, if you have any questions, definitely leave those in the comments. And you guys take such good care of yourselves, and so will I. Okay, okay, bye. Okay, bye. Okay.